I was 12 when my cousin took me to my first weight loss facility.
Laurie, how did you find carnivore?
Well, thank you, Dave, for having me on your show. I think Carnivore found me. I don't think I found it. I was first really, really depressed. I was on antidepressants. So, what I was doing was Googling spiritual leaders. So, the first person I Googled was Eckhart Tolle. And he was helping me through my depression, my anxiety. And through the same feed, it showed up low carb. So I clicked on a couple of low carbs and then I clicked on Maria Emmerich. And in the beginning, I went keto, but I didn't understand the macros because, again, I'm still a very foggy head. I couldn't cope really during the day because of the meds I was on. So I did my best without figuring out the macros. And I lost 30 pounds that way, which was, I thought was great, but then I stuck. Couldn't lose weight. Then I found Maria Emmerich, who does the PFSM days, which was low fat, high protein. Then I dropped another 30 pounds doing that, but I just didn't feel right. I was still achy. I deal with a lot of chronic pain. I had an accident 4 years ago, so that will probably never heal up. But I figured the less inflammation I have, the better I might feel. And then I heard Dr. Ken Berry, and he basically said, eat your meat on your plate first. Then, if you're still hungry, eat the vegetables. And what I found I was doing, I wasn't eating enough. I was eating part of my meat, part of my vegetables, and then I got full and I would throw the rest of it away. So then I started tracking. Even though everybody says you don't have to track, you eat until you're full, I would get full faster than the normal. And so I started tracking, and I was only eating 600 calories, and I was only eating maybe 60 grams of protein. But my body was telling me I was full. So I had to track. And then I figured out that Maria Emmerich had a free calculator. So I got on there and it said I had to eat 150 grams of protein. And I thought, yeah, that's not me. So I started eating 100 to 120 and the weight started like peeling off. And I went, wow. And then I dropped 70 pounds. And then I've been at a stall now for almost 8 months. And I don't know what it was. I started tracking again. I redid my macros because I had lost 70 pounds, thinking, is my macros still the same? So I did the macros and then I said, you know what? I don't want the vegetables anymore. I'm too full. So I focused on my meat. So I would fork out a pound of meat um, through one meal a day, and I still couldn't get through it. I had a difficult time eating the 1 pound. So I had to go with 2 meals a day. So what I was doing was having, say, 4 to 6 eggs in the morning and then try to eat 12 ounces of meat at night. And that worked better for me. And then when I went carnivore, I gained 20 pounds. But then I had heard that you can gain because your body is trying to heal. And I have a lot of healing because of my injury of 14 years ago. I have scar tissue all down my right leg because I have 2 hamstring tears that will never heal. They're off the bone. I have 3 bulging discs in my lower back. I have sciatic issues and I had depression. So when I went carnivore, it was maybe a week to 8 days and I felt clear in the head, but I still felt a little off. So then I said to my husband, I said, maybe I'm being over medicated. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I was 280 pounds. And that was the dose that they put me on at 200. Well, I was 289. And they put me on this dose for that weight. So I said, you know what? I'm going to wean myself off. Now I was on 3. So I weaned myself off of 1 and I felt better. Then I weaned
So
my,
these are SSRIs?
yes, I was on 3 of them. So I weaned myself off of 1, which took about 6 months. And I weaned myself off the second one, which took me another 6 months. And I was on Ativan, lorazepam, which I didn't have to wean myself off. It was just, you could just go cold turkey. So within 8 months to 9 months of me clearing myself off of all of my medication, of antidepressants, I had a clear brain. I could think properly. I could make out recipes. I could read a book. I couldn't read a book before. I could actually watch a movie from the beginning to the end without having to turn it off. And my husband was even amazed that I could watch a movie. Normally, I would say, okay, I've had enough. Let's watch it again tomorrow. But I can watch a full one. I still have hard time standing for long periods of time, but I think that's my bulging discs and my sciatic. I still have to take some pain meds, but not like I used to. I I was on Tramasad. I was on um, I can't even think of them all. They were Cipralex, and I didn't want to take a Percocet. They offered it to me many times, and I said, no, I'll suck it up. We're not buying prescriptions, even though we're kind of covered here in Canada. Everybody has their own healthcare is paid for, but not our prescriptions. So thank goodness that I'm still employed. So part of my prescriptions are still covered. So, but in the beginning, to say how I became overweight is I was not overweight as a child. I started gaining weight at 12 and 13. And now that I look back on it, I think it was the hormones. But I said to you earlier, my dad used to say in front of his friends, look at her. She's slender, but she's very heavy. Go pick her up. So they would all pick me up and then I'd run in my room because I didn't like it. It was made me uncomfortable. And I mean, he did it often. And then my mother would say in the same breath, says, well, if you want to lose weight, just don't eat. And the reason why she would say that is my mother was anorexic. And I noticed it when I was 13 that she barely ate anything, but she loved to cook. She loved to bake. And I also said this earlier, my family's from Newfoundland. So my mother grew up not eating very much because she was very poor. So she ate once a week. So with us growing up, she made sure we had food on the table. And she said always, there will always be food in this house. So you eat and you eat your plate. You eat what's on your plate, like normal, like everybody else is told. And then I realized my mom was having, those teacup saucers with the saucer plate underneath it. That's what her dinner was on. So she would go and take a little bit of meat and maybe a quarter of a potato, and that would be her dinner. And then she'd go and have a cookie, or she'd have a piece of cake that she made. That was her, that's how she filled up, was on her sweets. Where us, we didn't have the sweets growing up. We had a lot of processed food. Newfoundlanders, they eat a lot of what they call bologna, but the bologna is not the thin bologna that you buy in the store now. It comes in a log, and we used to cut it off like an inch thick. And then that was our midnight snack, I want to say, before we went to bed. But I think we just ate the wrong things growing up. We ate a lot of fish and meat and salt beef, which that's on Carnivore now, which I love it. I can have all the salt beef I want, which is equal to what the Americans call cottage roll, I think they call it. It's like a pickled brisket. I can't remember what they call it. Newfoundlanders call it pickled beef, and it's pickled in rind for a long time, and it's delicious, just like the stuff in the United States. Like I said earlier, we would buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes, and that would last a family of 4 a month. And because we didn't have a lot of food, but we had a lot of bologna and hot dogs and ham, and which was all done in dextrose and sugar. Yes, we'd have potatoes. She made a lot of macaroni. So yeah, we did have some carbs, not a lot of fruit. The only time we would have fruit is at Christmas. In our stocking, we would have an apple and an orange and those peanuts, raw peanuts. That was our, and we had a little toy in it. But my mom never bought fruit throughout the year. We didn't have oranges, apples in the house until 2000, year 2000. Then I guess I was married at the time, but then that's when I noticed she was bringing in the grapes and yogurt, but we never had that growing up. But back to my dieting, I was 12 when my cousin took me to my first weight loss facility, and it was in the basement of a church. And you had to get up and weigh yourself in front of everybody. And that was embarrassing. And then you had to tell them what you ate through the week. I was 13. So, of course, you leave that. And what do? You want to go and have something to eat. But I'm not an emotional eater. So I think a lot of me being overweight is I was eating the wrong things. I was under eating. I was eating donuts and chips. My chips is my downfall. I could eat like 2-3 bags of chips. And that's what would fill me up when I was younger. Carnivore is the only thing that I don't stray. I don't want the chips. I don't want the junk because I'm so full. And like me and my husband went out for groceries. Now he just started the carnivore diet. And we went out for groceries and he went and looked at the ham. And I said, we don't need that. It's full of dextrose. And he goes, okay, as long as you say so. And then he's walking some more and he stopped at the cakes and cookies and he's got a sweet tooth. And we kept on walking. And then when I get in the car, I said, you surely showed your addiction to me today. And he said, you're right. I said, you wanted me to buy French fries. You wanted me to buy the onion rings. I said, you're only 2 weeks into this and you still have the cravings. That doesn't bother me at all. So I'm glad for that. And this is the first time in my life ever that I've kept 70 pounds off. Even though I might have said I'm stalled now for 6 months, I've not regained it except for the 20 when I started carnivore. But out of the 20, I have lost 17 of that 20 now. So I started back losing again, but it took almost 8 months of being carnivore to be installed to finally move that needle. But again, it was all because I was under eating.
I think that's important for people to hear because you hear, I get a lot of comments from people on my channel saying, well, I've been doing carnivore for 2 months now and, I'm putting on weight or, nothing's happening or whatever. It's really important for the people to hear that eventually it starts happening again, right?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. But I believe the reason why I didn't lose the last 35 pounds is because I was still having heavy whipping cream. I was still having milk in my coffee. I was still eating cheese. And then my husband said, maybe you shouldn't have dairy because you can't digest it. You were allergic to it as a child. So I dropped it out of my diet altogether. I do have cheese, but it's lactate-free cheese that I have once a month, maybe. So if I'm making a ground beef and I want to have a little flavor, I'll put in the dairy-free cheese. Other than that, I had to drop it. And I think that has helped me lose the 17 of the 20 that I gained being on carnivore. But I hear it all the time on my page that, or on anybody else's group page, they go, I haven't lost anything and it's been 2 months, 3 months. And I say, you have to heal first. I had asthma, gone now. I had varicose veins, gone. It's slightly there, but you can't even see them. Like my husband even noticed that. My bursitis in my hip.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a great big like spider on my leg, gone. And then my bursitis is gone. And that was due to my accident. Is I fell at work. I did the front splits and I split all my right side up. So yeah, painful. And when the inflammation started coming down, I'm like, I used to take 8 Tramacets a day. And then it went down to 5. Then it went down to 4. Then it went down to 2. So every now and then I have to take 1. But I was taking 8, which, what's that doing to your liver? Like, you're killing your liver that way. And I said, I don't want to live this way. Now, my grandparents was never on any medication. And my grandfather had a stroke at 88. And they had said, you had no reason that, I think it was what is it called? A TIA, where it was stress related. So it had nothing to do with blocked arteries, or people assume just because you have a TIA that it's a stroke. No, that's usually done by stress. And then at 88, they diagnosed him with prostate cancer. And the doctor said, he won't die of prostate cancer. He lived until he was 96. No sugar, hardly any bread, was just fish and meat. And again, they had maybe a potato every other day, which to me back then, that wasn't a lot. They would have cabbage, though. That was their staple, was fish and cabbage and meat. And my grandmother lived until she was 95. So both of them, without eating any carbs, really, cabbage, do you count that as a carb? I count that as a vegetable to some. And my father had diabetes, but he ate a lot of the junk. He was a sweet tooth person. So diabetes got him in the end. But I just lost my last sibling, my last uncle, was last September, and he was 96. And he ate basically meat. That was him. So I am a firm believer with my own body, my own mind, and seeing my grandparents live to the ripe age of that they did with their cognitive, with their faculties. They lived on their own until they were 93. And even until the day they passed, they could go to the washroom on their own. They took a shower on their own. My grandfather ended up, he was in the hospital because he had a mild stroke. Then it went into a major stroke, and then he went into a coma, and then he passed away. But he was 96. You would expect that, I would think. That's just, So I think longevity is in the family, but I think if you don't take care of your body, longevity doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, your body can only do so much, right? If
Yeah.
you're pouring poison into your body, it doesn't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're eating pretty much the same way now? You're still having the eggs for breakfast and the 2 meals?
Yes. If I go to one meal, I can't eat enough. And I heard Elizabeth Albright say women need our food and our fat for our hormones. And and she said, if you can't get in your proper fat and your proper protein, you might as well have 2 meals a day. She has 1 meal a day, but I just can't. My body tells me I'm full too quickly. So if I break it up into 2 meals, then I'm okay that way. I can tend to get the majority of my protein in. But I don't track my fat. I do high protein. I put in my macros for all of it, but I track my protein, track my carbs, and wherever my fat lays, that's where it lays. Because I was doing high fat before, and I would gain weight. So I found the high protein was better for me. Now, maybe when I get to my goal, I might be able to get into the higher fat. But I've also noticed that I've gained muscle now that I'm doing protein. I just turned 60, and I have I don't know if I call it a DEXA scale. It's one of the cheap ones you get on Amazon. And I said, well, if it's accurate, it is. If it's not, at least it's giving me a guideline. So I have 19% visceral fat in my stomach, which I thought that was not so bad considering I have to lose another 60 pounds. So 70 pounds gone, 60 more to go. And I think 2024 is my year. And what's that gentleman's name? Sean.
Intentional carnivore.
Yes. I love his group, and he even says make one day every day better, one day better. Which I love all the groups that I'm in. They're so inspirational, and I believe anybody that's looking into keto, carnivore, ketogenic diet needs a support group and being in a group, not necessarily paying for a support group, because I haven't paid anything for me to lose my 70 pounds. I didn't join a group. I did go into Carnivore Quest, into a little chat, but other than that, and then people say that carnivore is expensive. We have a home in Florida, and I have a friend down there that has done the ketogenic, and she had asked me about carnivore. Is it expensive? And I went to say, not really, because you're not eating the junk. And my husband interfered and looked over, and he says, it's cut our bill in half. And I said, there you go. There's your answer.
Very nice. So is your husband now pretty much eating the same as you, same times as you? And
Well, he eats but the same time as me. Now I have given in. He hasn't asked, but maybe I've given him sweet potatoes once since he started this, just so that he can ease into it and not feel deprived. But he says he likes his yogurt, he likes his ice cream, and as long as I make the ice cream carnivore or keto, then at least it's not all full of sugar and full of high processed carbs. And I find that even with my mom and my grandparents, they all cooked from scratch. And that's what we all need to get back to, is cook from scratch. Even if you wanted to make homemade bread, and you're not keto or carnivore, just don't add the crap into it. Just flour, salt, and water. You don't have to add any preservatives, because it's going to be eaten. If you freeze it, then it's going to get eaten. That's just me. I think everything should be brought to scratch again. And I think the thing that's helping my husband is carnivore. Chris Cooking Carnivore has come out with a carnivore bread, and I make the buns. And my husband says that's what's getting me by, is you making the bread, which was a bonus. But carnivore to me doesn't cure everything. And people think it's a miracle pill or a miracle cure. I'm still going to have my bulging discs. I'm still going to have my sciatic issues. I'm still going to have scar tissue in my leg. But I'm hoping with the inflammation, the pain's going to be brought down. I went for, this is one thing I think you might find funny. I have a new doctor, so she wanted to do all the cross the T's, dot the I's, and she sent me in for blood work. Well, I have high cholesterol, and no other doctor has ever commented about my cholesterol before, ever. So the first time she questioned it, I said, so what's my ratio? And she's trying to tell me about the total cholesterol. And I said, can I find out what my ratio is? And she goes, oh, it's a 1. I said, oh, I'm good then. So I walked out. So in December, I had to go in for more blood work, and I had a phone consult with her. And she goes, Lori, I'm still concerned about your total cholesterol. I said, I'm not. And then she says, well, you're leaving for Florida. When? And I said, in 7 days. She says, we'll deal with it when you come back home. So I said to my husband, I went, if it's that much of an emergency, wouldn't she say, I don't want you to go to Florida without me checking out your cholesterol? And he goes, well, not really. I said, yes, really. I said, if I'm going to live 6 months down in Florida with a high cholesterol and she wants to worry about it when I come home, not happening. Like, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it feels like they're just going through the motions. It's like, oh, well, the checklist says I have to say this.
I agree. And she's a new doctor. So she might be 40-ish. So I'm hoping when I go back that I can bring up Nick Norwitz and all of their studies that they've done, and print them out from Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Ovadia. And that's another, all the doctors, the reason why Patrick finally got on board, as I said, look, there's a heart surgeon, Dr. Ovadia, that's a carnivore. And here's Dr. Sean Baker. Look there's Dr. Ken Berry. I listed them all off and I went, Dr. Shafee. And I says, they're doctors that are practicing doctors. If they're on it, it's got to be something.
And that convinced him, right?
It did, because he's seen me lose the 70 pounds. He's seen me being able to get around a little bit more. And he's on a statin, which I am not impressed over. So even today, he's complaining about his aches and pains. He says, I thought this diet was supposed to get rid of my aches and pains. I said, not when you're taking a statin. I said, maybe if you get off of that, then your aches and pains would go away. But see, he believes that he needs to have a doctor take him off of it. I went, you're your own advocate. And I said, he says, well, you won't go on one? I said, absolutely not. I have enough aches and pains. I don't need anything from a statin.
How long has he been on the statin?
Almost 2 years, it really bothers me. Because I said to him, is it a total cholesterol that they're looking at? Or is it the individual? And he says, I don't know. Now, he's older than me. He's 67. And I said, you need your cholesterol as you age. So I said, I have a printout of that. And I said, you're taking that to your doctor. And I said, I'm going to print out the other studies, because he's also on a blood pressure pill or a blood thinner, only because he had low blood pressure. His blood pressure was 65 over 95. So they were concerned of him having a blood clot. And now his blood pressure and everything's gone back to normal. Because we have a drugstore here. It's called Shoppers Drug Mart. You can go get your blood work done there for free. And it's 125 over 95. It's 130 over 85. It's back to normal. So I said to him, I think you need to talk to your doctor about getting off that blood thinner as well. Because when he goes and shaves, he bleeds like you wouldn't believe because of the thinner. And I said, if we're ever in a car accident, that blood thinner is the thing that's going to get you. So that other gentleman, Bob, semi-retired Bob, he had said he's off of his blood thinners as well. He's off of his gout medication. My husband's too afraid to go off of them. He's also on gout. But since he's been eating what I've been eating, on and off for about a year, he hasn't had a gout flare up. So I said to him, why don't you just stop the medication? I'm afraid. And I said, well, you're no longer having those milk substitutes where it's hidden sugar in it, where it says 0 sugar, but then you look at the ingredients and it's got sugar cane in it. Because he was buying the Nestle creamer, it says no sugar added. And then he had a gout flare up. This is a year ago. And I mean, he was in bed for almost 7 days. He couldn't move his foot. I went and looked at his cream and I said, this is why there's sugar cane in it. So at that point, he stopped and he started drinking my milk, but he wouldn't give up the French fries and the onion rings. He was still bringing them in the house. Where as of a month ago, when we came back from Florida, I said, I'm not buying them anymore. I'll make you onion rings and I'll make you whatever you want as long as I can make it keto or carnivore. So the onion rings I make, he loves them. I make fried pickles for him. And that's why I'm really not 100% carnivore. I will have the odd deep fried pickle, but maybe once or twice a month. So I'm like, I don't know. Like even Professor Bart Kay says, if you're 70% meat eating, then you're a carnivore. I don't eat the potatoes. I don't eat the vegetables. I actually started about 6 months ago to try to implement them, to try to get my stall unstalled. And I ended up, my IBS acted up again. And I said, nope, that's enough of that. And then, you know, that water solution stuff that they say that will flatten your tummy, where you put lemon and you put ginger and you put cucumber in the water and you let it sit and then you drink it. My anxiety came back. And after 4 days, I said to my husband, I said, why do I have this anxiety? I haven't had to take anything and any medication. He said, "What are you doing different?" I said, "Drinking that water." And he said, "Stop drinking it." So I stopped drinking it. Within 2 days, my anxiety was gone. So, and I know I can put lemon in water, it doesn't bother me. And I know I can have ginger because I drink ginger ale. I believe it was the cucumber that brought on my anxiety. So, which is vegetables. I've tried to eat a Caesar salad with my own dressing. No, I can't. My IBS acts up. Spinach is the worst. I'm in the bathroom right after I eat it. But again, back to the beginnings of carnivore, you're going to spend the majority of your time in the washroom for the first couple of weeks, if not 30 days. But you're detoxing, you're getting all that sugar out of you.
So just on that, like if a friend came to you and said, Laurie, how do I get started with carnivore? What advice would you give them?
I would say you're going to have the carnivore flu or the keto flu no matter what. I would say jump in. Um, or I would say take the carbs out and put more meat on your plate and put less salad on your plate. Because before they give you the pie plate and say, this would be your salad, this would be your pasta, this would be your meat, I said, have most of it being your meat. Actually, my girlfriend, I just gave the diet to her because her daughter was diagnosed with bipolar. And I said, this might help your daughter because her daughter doesn't want to take medication. So I said to her, ease into it. So it's all on everybody's individuality. I think I was on keto first. So I don't know if you classify me as easing it in, but I did drop the salad right away once I figured out that the salad was causing my IBS to act up. And I did have repercussions for about 30 days. It took about 45 days for my IBS to go into remission. If I don't eat enough meat, I find if I eat too much fat, then my IBS acts up again. That's another reason why I track my protein and not my fat. But I get about 80 to 90 grams of fat to 120 to 130 of protein, which I think that's still high in fat. Where the standard American diet, what do they say? 60% protein and then 40% fat, or I can't remember the ratio what the standard American diet is anymore. I haven't followed it in about 2 years, so I don't know what the ratios are.
Laurie, you mentioned you have a page. Do you have social media if people want to reach out to you?
I do have a Facebook page and it's under Lori Brick, and I have an Instagram page which is Keto with Love, and I have a Threads page which is Keto with Love. I've been wanting to start a channel, but I'm worried and leery about the trolls because of what happened with Amanda, and I don't want to retrack on my depression because I'm doing so well. So I don't know. I might one day.
All right. Well, I'll link to your pages below, and Laurie, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.